welcome from the Great White North. Now it's pretty cold as hell today, and still really winter is frig out, but that doesn't matter. The spring is coming and I need to get my turbo off of here and get it up to Nick from Turbo Parts Canada to let him do a little overhaul on it, see if we can maybe squeeze a few more pounds of air out of this thing and maybe even make it a little more street friendly. Nick seems to think he has the recipe for this, so I'm going to send it up his way and see if he can work his magic. Now, I don't want to bore you with all the details of removing the turbo. It's nothing crazy. If you've worked on these cars, I'm assuming you've probably already done it before, and if you haven't, it's nothing too complicated. Basically, disconnect your oil lines, disconnect your exhaust, any O2 sensors or anything in the way, back lines for a wastegate. Yeah, it's nothing complicated.
Alright, so I'm starting here by getting the car jacked up. I have to start off on one side because the lip on the front of the car makes it too low to get the jack under. So I jack one side and get the jack under the center, under the cross member. Now you've heard it 1,000 times, but use jack stands if you're ever going to be working under a car, and make sure they're placed well. I had a friend from high school that died because he was crushed by a vehicle he was working under. You just never know, so don't take the risk. Take the time and set the car up well. You don't want any accidents. You'll see here I readjust it a couple times just to make sure it's sitting exactly the way I want. Here's a quick little tip. Remove your dipstick right away, especially if you have one of the 2G ones with a plastic handle. They snap off super easy, so remove it, set it aside. Otherwise, you'll be buying another one. Learn from me, I've broken a few. Now I'm starting by draining the coolant. This should be one of your first things to do, as it'll take time for the system to empty out and it gives you some valuable time to work on other stuff while it drains. Make sure you use a bucket or something that's large enough so that you're not pouring your coolant on the floor while you're not paying attention to it. I believe there's about 2 gallons or so in the coolant system once you empty the radiator, so plan ahead, make sure your bucket's big enough. So now I remove the heat shield, and the next step will be the wastegate, just to get that out of the way and make more room to work. Now I'm using a 14 millimeter socket on a 1/2 inch drive with a swivel extension and a 24-inch breaker bar. This will make really easy work of getting the turbo bolts loose. Once you've got them cracked loose, then you can use a regular ratchet to get them the rest of the way out. The breaker bar just makes it super easy so you don't have to force. And the swivel extension makes sure you don't scratch up your valve cover or anything if you care for something like that. Now I'm removing my oxygen sensor. This is a wideband sensor for my MTXL. So I want to make sure that's disconnected and out of the way. Now disconnecting the radiator lines, and as well as the unplugging the fans and my boost controller. Sometimes the radiator hoses like to stick a little bit, especially if they've been on for a while. You can usually get a small screwdriver in behind the rubber a little bit, just pry it a little bit, not too hard, you don't want to damage the hose, but a little bit of pressure. Now remove the 2 rad support brackets, and that's pretty much all that's left holding in there. Take the radiator out, set it aside somewhere safe where you won't jam up the fins or anything, or it won't fall over or something won't land on it. I really don't want to damage my $99 eBay radiator. Yes, you heard me, it's an eBay radiator. One of the few eBay parts on my car. Now I'm disconnecting the turbo coolant feed and return lines and allowing them to drain. Now I'm removing the lower intercooler pipe. A couple T-bolt clamps, simple enough. Also unbolting the downpipe from the O2 housing. Your downpipe should be able to just hang there, being supported by the rest of the exhaust. Now one of the last things I've got to do is disconnect my oil feed line and remove the lower heat shield. So now everything's disconnected. It's just the 4 turbo to manifold bolts that are holding everything in, and they're all loose. So just take them out by hand and you're done.
So this is the little guy that makes all the fun. Force Performance Old School FP Red. This is the newer generation of Old School FP Red with the 35R compressor wheel. It's a bad little street turbo. 65 pounds a minute capable. And this has been on my car for about 4 years, I think it is now. It has no shaft play. This is a journal bearing turbo. Everything is in pretty good condition. It's been great to me, very reliable. No issues at all. I've removed the coolant lines, removed the oil feed line, removed the O2 housing. Basically, I want to do as much work as I can to make the job easier for Nick. You know, anytime you want to send somebody something, the least amount of work they have to do, they're going to appreciate it more. So that'll be off to Nick at Turbo Parts Canada to see if he can work his magic on it and make it even better. And just give it a general overhaul, make sure everything's tip top.